Let's start with our prayer. Welcome back, everyone. Let's do our prayer. Homage to the fundamental teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. Homage to the wisdom warrior, Manjushri. Homage to all the benevolent lineage masters. With all of your kindness and love, let your wisdom's shining light clear the darkness of my ignorance once and for all. Grant me, I pray, the intelligence, the brilliance to understand the scriptures, both the word and the treatises. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. To accomplish the welfare of self and others, I give rise to bodhicitta. I think we had a really good session last time. I haven't really looked through the video yet, but that's I think we stopped at verse 2, right? Did we?
Yes.
So we should continue with verse 3, right? Yeah, I think. All right.
Avert afflictions as soon as they arise. In my every action, I will watch my mind. And the moment destructive emotions arise, I will confront them strongly and avert them, since they will hurt both me and others. In every action and deed, every speech and behavior of my everyday life, I will examine my mind. And as soon as mental and emotional afflictions arise, because they endanger myself and others, I will discover and confront them rapidly and firmly avert them without delay. The root causes of afflictions. As an ordinary being, everyone has mental and emotional afflictions. With respect to the root causes of these afflictions or defilements, both Sutrayana and Tantrayana have their own explanations. In Sutrayana teachings, the roots of emotional afflictions are unwholesome mental factors and ignorance. In Tantric teachings, the root cause of afflictions is dualistic clinging, which is further caused by the subtle karmic winds, or the three appearances of subtle semen, blood, and wind energy, upon which the habitual tendencies ride. As a result, Sutrayana tradition and Tantrayana tradition have different ways in counteracting mental and emotional afflictions. The Sutrayana way turns causes into Dharma practices, and the Tantrayana way turns results onto the path. Lord Atisha inherited the intentions of Asanga, and Langri Tangpa carried forward the style of Lord Atisha. Lord Atisha used to point out that if someone seeks the Dharma but does not apply it in counteracting emotional afflictions, his practice will be in vain. Our purpose of learning the Dharma and doing spiritual practices should be towards eliminating mental and emotional afflictions. So what kind of antidote shall we use for this purpose? Here, Geshe Langri Tangpa's pith instructions is to observe and examine our mind in all kinds of activities, such as sitting, walking, lying down, and standing, for the purpose of seeing whether it is in positive state, a negative state, or a neutral state. If it is a negative state, which one of 5 poisonous afflictions has it given rise to? Does it have any coming, or does it have any coming and going? Does it have a shape, color, or inherent nature? By repeatedly and carefully examining one's own mind stream in this way, a wise person will be able to counteract mental and emotional afflictions with mindfulness and alertness. When destructive emotions or bad thoughts arise, we will abandon them immediately and confess to them with deep regret. But a person lacking in wisdom does the opposite. He is unable to tell what is right or what is wrong, and may even mistake one for the other. As a result, he will be unable to remedy the mental afflictions on his own. Our mental and emotional afflictions arise within the mind. If the mind does not give rise to these afflictions, even if we encounter unfavorable conditions, such as illness or other physical ability, we will not be endangered by any affliction. Modern medical science and physiology also share the belief that suffering and happiness are determined mainly by one's mental state. If one is happy, the physical pain is lessened. On the other hand, if one is caught up in mental suffering, the physical pain is felt even stronger. Destroy afflictions as soon as they arise. We should know that afflictions are manifestations of the habitual tendencies in our mind and can be eliminated completely through certain remedies. For example, among the Han students of the Fourfold Assembly, some had an obstinate character with strong mental and emotional afflictions when they first came to Larangyar. After a certain period of time, by listening to the Dharma, reflecting and meditating upon it, they became more kind-hearted, had better personalities, and their wisdom increased gradually. Along with that, their mental and emotional afflictions decreased. However, once they paid less attention to the counteracting remedies, the old afflictions and habitual tendencies gradually rose up again. If they were able to keep practicing with diligence and perseverance over the course of time, their minds would progressively become tamed, and strong afflictions themselves would be brought into the path. This was something that was experienced by every practitioner over the course of his or her spiritual practice. Here, the moment destructive emotions arise, I will confront them strongly and avert them. Means that as soon as disturbing emotions such as anger arises in our mind, we must extinguish it immediately and avert it without delay. As is recounted in the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva, when emotions become habitual, they are hard to get rid of with antidotes. Therefore, with mindfulness and vigilance, to seize the weapon of the antidote and crush attachment and other negative emotions, the moment they arise is the practice of the Bodhisattva. If the disturbing emotions are not severed as soon as they arise, they will endanger ourselves and others. For instance, when we meet a bad person, we should, at the very beginning, contemplate that this person, like all sentient beings, has Buddha nature. Therefore, he or she should be treated as our equal. If we did not give rise to the thought of visualization from the very beginning, by the time we have begun to quarrel and have reached the height of our anger, it would then be virtually impossible for us to counteract the disturbing emotions through mindfulness and alertness. His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche has also said that if a disturbing emotion is not counteracted as soon as it arises, by the time it grows to any extent whatsoever, it will be very difficult for it to be subdued. Although it is mentioned in the unsurpassable great perfection, Songchen, that carry afflictions onto the path, the inherent nature of afflictions is Bodhi itself, and all phenomena are pure and equal. As ordinary beings, our perceptions of things is nevertheless defiled. The only thing we can do, perhaps, is to make an aspiration in our heart and pray that we will reach the spiritual state in which afflictions can be taken onto the path and all phenomena turn out to be pure and equal as quickly as possible. At the same time, in our conduct, we should act based upon the Sutrayana perspective of the causal state and destroy the 5 poisons, which are attachment, anger, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy. Otherwise, merely an instant of anger is enough to destroy the merits that we have accumulated and to endanger both ourselves and others. An instant of strong attachment is enough to ruin our vowed discipline, as well as that of other people. Therefore, we should examine our mind from time to time and periodically avert our own negative thoughts. In earlier times, whenever the great Kadampa masters gave rise to bad thoughts, they would stop eating and drinking and would scold themselves or even beat themselves in order to subdue mental afflictions. This pith instructions may sound easy, but is extremely profound. Every Mahayana practitioner should rely on this pith instruction and constantly and diligently observe the 3 doctors of body, speech, and mind.
Okay, let's stop here and
Okay.
do a little discussion.
Okay.
What impressed you most in these paragraphs or in this verse?
Okay. What impressed me
Go
the
back
most
to the
is,
verse.
I think the message I got from this is that there are different methods of dealing with your afflictions, but one thing to keep in mind is that you should act upon them immediately, or be aware of them. Otherwise, that affliction or that situation will fester, just become big enough that it's going to be difficult to handle. And it's important to realize the cause of that particular behavior or that affliction, and deal with it. Personally, I think it's a really good practice to show compassion and to show empathy. Empathy is everything. If you could take yourself out of the equation, I think personally that is the cause of many of my afflictions and suffering. And again, as it states here, there are different ways of dealing with it. But the most important thing to take heed of is that you need to look at the other person's point of view as well. And you need to be aware of why that affliction happened in the first place, especially if it's something that is continuing. In other words, if it repeats itself, it's good to know the cause, and it's good to find a quick solution to it so it doesn't fester. And so, rather you do it in a Citriana or whether you do it in a tantric method, whatever works for you.
Okay, I may have missed what you said. You said this cause of your afflictions. What you think is lack of empathy?
The cause, I think with me, it doesn't matter really what the cause of the affliction is. It doesn't matter. The circumstances really don't matter, because it all comes down to one thing. If I'm willing to be to empathize, if I'm willing to see the other side of the story, no matter what it is, then really the details don't matter, or the cause of it doesn't matter. It's as simple as opening your heart and opening your mind to the other aspects of it.
Very good.
What caused that other person to do what they did? What did I do? Did I do anything? Or if you look into that, if you look into a little bit deeper, then you can get to the cause of it fairly quickly. And
very good. Very
yeah,
good.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, you want
It
to
doesn't have to be.
understand
It
the
doesn't have to be
other's
complicated.
situation. Why did they do that, right?
But one of the things that I disagree with is punishing yourself, like it said, not eating and all the other things, and it's suggesting that might be a method. I mean, that might work for some people.
Oh, you mean those Kadampa masters?
Exactly.
They
I mean, with
stopped.
me, I used to just on a comical note, I used to put an elastic around my wrist, and whenever I did anything that was wrong, or not it wasn't a good thing, or if I was swearing or doing something that that was a bad afflictions, I would flick that elastic, and it would cause me pain, just for that.
Right.
It's just a reminder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
But
you.
anyways, yeah.
Yeah. So I understand you think the cause of your afflictions is just it doesn't matter, and it matters that you keep open mind to understand others and to keep your empathy. It's a very good approach. maybe when you keep your open mind, do you realize that actually when we open our mind, it actually means we let go a little bit of ourselves and just let
Exactly.
in of a little bit of others. So
Yes.
actually the root cause, if according to Sutrayana, it's attachment to self. So when you keep your open mind, you kind of let go of a little bit of self and let in of a little bit of others. So it's a very good, keeping open mind is a very good approach. Yeah,
Well,
but
that's what I came to a conclusion of. Most of my suffering comes from the self, from the ego.
right.
And so if I can take that out of the equation, but another way of looking at it is you have to look at the patterns, and is there a pattern? Every time the afflictions come up, certain afflictions, what is causing that? And being aware of the pattern is extremely helpful,
Mm.
because then you can catch yourself. You can say, hey, when I am in this situation, or when I am facing this situation, how can I deal with it differently? And again, it's
You're talking about the pattern of your own response. You're not talking about the pattern of other people's behavior.
no, only
Oh,
mine.
good. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
not the
good.
other person's, not the other person's behavior. The other person's behavior is not my
That's
concern. It's
very good. Very good. Excellent. Yeah,
okay. So that's what I'm getting out of this passage so far.
very good. We'll get to that. Punish yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to go over a little bit about the because this verse is explained in three little outlines: the root cause of affliction, and then B is destroy afflictions as soon as they arise, and C is to be read, which is pay more attention to our speech. So for the root causes, it's a self-attachment, and this is the very root cause for all this suffering, for drifting in the samsara. But so also talk about the habitual tendencies, because this attachment to self can become a very subtle habitual tendencies that when we think we try to control ourselves, to control our emotions, a lot of times we think we get it under control, we deal with situations very well, but that habitual tendencies can be guaranteed still exist in there and running in the background, like those background programs running in the computers. They never stop. To get rid of that habitual tendencies, really need repeated practice. And I think you really need to get very deep, almost like to be actually you get rid of that after you attend the enlightenment. Then there are two ways, talking about the Sutrayana way and the Tantrayana way, right? And then the Sutrayana tradition they are a little bit different. The Sutrayana ways turn courses into Dharma practice. So we realize there is a self, we realize that there are these 5 poisons, and then we know they're bad, we want to get rid of them, right? So that is the turn causes, because we know that is the cause of afflictions. Then the Tantrayana way turns results into the past. What is the results? The results means we are primordially the Buddhas. So we all have this Buddha nature in us. This is the result. And then if we realize all these afflictions that we display, I kind of a manifestation of our Buddha nature. So if you can grasp that point, you just instantly, when the afflictions arise, you instantly realize that is part of the manifestation of your Buddha nature. So in that way, you know that is the result, and you know that is the action of your own Buddha nature. So you kind of that affliction, once you realize that, that affliction can automatically go away. It's kind of like a melt into the emptiness, like into nowhere. So this is the turn results into path. So this is the root cause and the two passes, Sutrayala and the Tantrayala paths. And then we talked about Lord Atisha here, and remember the transmission lineage is from Lord Atisha to Pataupa to Narottama. So I actually have a little more to share later today for that transmission lineage. So for our affliction, so once we recognize, we need to be conscious about our own emotions, our afflictions. Once if to examine it is a positive, negative, or a neutral one. So so this is an interesting way to put it. Say, does it have these afflictions? Say you're angry at something, your anger rise. It doesn't matter to whom you're angry to, but if you realize you have an anger arise in yourself, so you go examine that anger. Does it have a shape, color, or inherent nature? And then, of course, your anger doesn't have a shape. It's not a triangular. It's not a square. It's not red or even white. And it doesn't have an inherent nature because it wouldn't stay. Your anger probably stay for, well, if it's a stubborn person, maybe stay for a day or two. If it's a not so stubborn person, maybe for 5 minutes. So if we do that kind of examination, Khenpo said a wise person would be able to counteract mental and emotional afflictions with mindfulness and alertness. So all this analysis just say the affliction or the anger, whatever, itself is emptiness in nature. If you recognize it and you can easily ditch it, just like let it go. Make your mind make a sharp turn, or you don't even need a turn, just let it go. So the end, the source of that anger is if the mind does not give rise to that affliction, then the affliction would not be there. Like we can look at many people face the same unfavorable conditions. Some people just don't get bothered at all, but other people may be, deeply bothered. So it's just how our mind, actually how we turn our mind on the situation. It's not the situation outside the situation per se. So Khenpo says here, the modern medical science also show the suffering and happiness are determined mainly by one's mental status. The external conditions maybe matters a little bit, but it's not the major factor. So that is the cause of affliction, and then destroy affliction as soon as they arise. So this again needs our mindfulness, right? So this is a very good practice, just like constantly be aware of what our emotions are, and once they arise, just deal with it. And the way to deal with it, the thing is like we need to deal with it right away. Otherwise, it can turn into becoming habitual tendencies, become like a habit. So once it become a habit, it's getting more stubborn and less easier and more difficult to deal with. Just like this verse says, when emotions become habitual, they are hard to get rid of with antidotes. Therefore, with mindfulness and vigilance, to seize the weapon of antidote and crush attachment and other negative emotions, the moment they arise, is the practice of Bodhisattva. Just deal with it right away. Don't wait and don't cultivate. Don't dwell on it. So, okay, this Kadamba masters, this is actually the tradition. I think I remember in words of my perfect teacher talking about the master teacher, when he arose some thoughts. I don't remember what thoughts. He realized that, and he stopped everything and took out his mandala plate and did right away to for purification. He did right away the mandala ceremony. I don't know if everybody remembers that. This is a very typical Kadamba practice. So I'm okay with stop eating and drinking. I think it's a good punishment for people who are very attached to eating and drinking. So beat themselves. I probably wouldn't beat myself. So but I think it's not required, but if it works for you, work it that way. If it doesn't, it's okay.
Pay more attention to our speech. Here, what should be particularly emphasized is that we need to pay attention to our own speech and refrain from talking about the faults of other people. In the 37 practices of a bodhisattva, it is stated that if impelled by negative emotions, I relate the faults of other bodhisattvas, I will myself degenerate. Therefore, to not talk about the faults of anyone who has entered the Mahayana is the practice of a bodhisattva. If we talk about other people's faults, we have transgressed the vows of the bodhisattva. Most of the people who were taken the vows, who here have taken the vows of the bodhisattva and are practitioners who have generated the Mahayana bodhicitta. So it is very likely that what they do and how they behave are in keeping with skillful methods of bodhisattvas intending to help sentient beings. Therefore, we should not make comments carelessly nor mention the faults of others. The Buddha articulated that very few people can understand the predispositions and capacities of sentient beings other than Buddhas. If we were Buddhas, we could point out the faults of others directly, but everyone may observe yourself. Have I attained Buddhahood yet? Perhaps someone would ask in return, Khenpo, you asked us not to mention the faults of others, but why in class do you mention our faults every day? The answer is that it is permitted in specific situations. However, every time I mention your faults, I'm very concerned that you would suffer from disturbing emotions on hearing this. So I speak as little about them as possible, or try to remind you in relatively mild ways. Meanwhile, however, I'm afraid that you would not recognize your own faults, and so I feel that I have to talk about them. This is different from simply pointing out the faults of others. For so many years, I I have never aroused a conflict with a disciple by mentioning one's faults in class. On the contrary, many people are able to see more clearly what their own faults are and put an end to those faults in their mind stream. However, when ordinary people speak about the faults of others, they are not doing so out of altruistic compassion, but rather are merely being driven by their own disturbing emotions. This both destroys the source of their own merits and deepens their prejudice toward other people. It is like a frost of obstacles laying on the crops of their own practice, and also sows discord, preventing harmonious union within the Sangha. Such behavior brings no benefit whatsoever, neither to themselves nor to any others. Therefore, when doing the mind training, we must, from time to time, examine every part of our speech and conduct, what we do and how we behave, and gradually learn to subdue our obstinate characters so that our mind continuum will grow ever gentler.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments on these?
I think it's a really good point. I've noticed this particularly at my work a lot of times. People want to vent when they're stressed out and kind of discuss maybe stressful people who came in and things like this. But I've realized myself that I feel like it's for me, I used to vent as well, but the more I've been practicing with you all, I've noticed that it's maybe not for the best reason, and it kind of grows those negative feelings for me to talk about the things, the negative things, rather than just try to be compassionate towards, maybe this person wasn't so nice because maybe they're just suffering or dealing with something. So I definitely think talking about it can quite grow those kind of negative thoughts. Yeah. I don't know if that made sense. Sorry.
Yeah, make perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if you look at this verse, in my every action, I will watch my mind, and the moment destructive emotions arise, I will confront them strongly and avert them, since they will hurt both me and others. So, but the third point is particularly related to speech, right? So once we have, and mind always goes first, right? And then action and speech. So, and plus, a lot of times the speech is very easy to get out of control, because if we don't be vigilant, and we can slip out something, and we may not pay attention, but it may hurt others. But by hurting others, it also will bounce back to ourselves. And here, I think particularly Khenpo talked about transgress the vows of Bodhisattvas. So, so from other studies, we know Bodhisattvas, if a person generated bodhicitta, which means this person vowed to benefit sentient beings and place all the sentient beings in the Buddhahood, and then that means this person has generated bodhicitta, and he or she is entitled to be called a bodhisattva because of the preciousness of the bodhicitta. So this person literally deserves taking the offerings from other people, literally. So and also means this person is has generated certain amount of merit in the self-continuum. So if we speak faults of these people, we may damage our own virtuous root. and also for these bodhisattvas, when they practice, because bodhisattvas usually they can have many different kind of actions that may not seemingly reasonable from ordinary people's point of view, but because they understand other people's mind, so they may use certain particular ways to help others. That's why the Buddha said very few people can understand the predispositions and the capacity of sentient beings other than the Buddhas. We're the ordinary people, we don't really know what other people's intention and what the purpose are. So if we just judge by our own judgment, we may make a really huge mistake. So that is the reason why we want to refrain ourselves from speaking forth of bodhisattvas. Also the other people, not just the bodhisattvas, but also anyone around us, right? Just a lot of times, if we say something in with wisdom and compassion, it may work, and but without that, it may not work, and it may be if we just say something driven by our own afflictions, and then that is something that we really need to watch.
May I cherish this precious treasure. Whenever I see ill-natured people or those overwhelmed by heavy misdeeds or suffering, I will cherish them as something rare, as though I'd found a priceless treasure. Great numbers of beings who have a negative disposition or an unpleasant character, and who are constantly oppressed by negative habits and sufferings, accumulate bad karma endlessly, endangering both themselves and others. When I, as a practitioner, meet such beings, may I consider them as precious as a rare treasure, so that they may become a special object of the patient's practice. This instruction is exceedingly precious. If a Mahayana practitioner has not fully developed such a merit, attaining Buddhahood in a single lifetime is impossible, and even the ordinary worldly accomplishments will be virtually out of reach. Therefore, we should value highly this marvelous pith instruction of the Mahayana practice. 3. Ill-natured people in a degenerate time. In this degenerate time, most sentient beings seem to be of a very negative disposition, wicked, depraved, rough, and unreasonable. Their continuum is filled with unwholesome understandings, bad thoughts, and wrong views. Regardless of this, we must determine the correct way to treat them. Obviously, it is not right if we respond to the depraved dispositions of these beings with contempt and aversion and remain aloof from them. For detailed elaborations on these instructions, you may refer to the Way of the Bodhisattva. On the level of intrinsic nature and ultimate truth, sentient beings and the Buddha are exactly the same. But in terms of manifest appearance, sentient beings are oppressed by afflictive emotions and enjoy no freedom of either their body or their mind, which explains why they have acquired such negative dispositions. In other words, because sentient beings have accumulated so much negative karma in the countless eons of their previous lives, and are now so heavily oppressed by this karma or these misdeeds that they are devoid of freedom, and thus have further developed extreme and terrible dispositions. Nevertheless, we must be convinced that most sentient beings, especially those who have their trust in the Buddha, or those who are the practitioners of Buddha Dharma, would like to conquer their own mental afflictions, yet influenced by the force of their karma, although they have not been able to act on this beautiful wish. As an example, people who are frequently seized by strong anger often feel deeply the suffering caused by this anger. When their anger subsides, they feel anguish and struggle in their mind, stung by a strong sense of remorse. They may think, next time I will not behave like this. However, the next time that they encounter a situation that provokes them, history repeats itself. And thus, again and again, they remain greatly and endlessly tortured by such afflictions. Being laden with karma accumulated since beginningless time, if these sentient beings cannot sever these afflictions at their root in the course of this life, through enthusiastic perseverance and practice, their next life will be one that is even more pathetic, more miserable, and one in which they have even less freedom. Eventually, they will fall into the 3 lower realms and suffer countless, endless, and unfathomable misery. Particularly in this day and age, the majority of beings, due to a lack of freedom in their bodies and minds, tend to do harmful deeds to other living beings. These actions may take place at any time, in any place, and often without any reason. We practitioners, if our mental afflictions have not yet been removed, are still mortals that can be affected by external conditions. Inevitably, we will have to face harm from evil beings and endure pain and anxiety. How should we then react to such situations? We should react using the key instructions given here. This verse has some semblance to the second instructions of this text, but this one provides us with further illustrations on the pith instruction of deeper practice. Cherish them as something rare. Although there are all kinds of sentient beings who may have strong attachments, strong anger, strong ignorance, strong arrogance, or strong doubt, we cannot let aversion or aloofness towards them arise within ourselves. Actually, it is impossible for us not to interact with them, which has been explained in the first verse of this text. And in the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva, it is also mentioned that for a Bodhisattva who desires the joys of virtue, all who harm him are like a precious treasure. Therefore, to cultivate patience toward all, without resentment, is the practice of a Bodhisattva. Whenever sentient beings harm us, we should give rise neither to aversion nor anger. On the contrary, we should receive them as a great jeweled treasure. This instruction is easier said than done. It is very difficult to even contemplate this, let alone carry it out in action. However, we must first understand the reason behind it and progressively learn how to put it into practice. All things are difficult before they are easy. Habits become second nature by getting used to them, little by little. Before long, we begin to act in these ways naturally. For instance, when we first tried to learn to use a computer, we might have been confused by its complicated operating procedures. But once we grew skillful on it, using a computer became a convenient way to do our work. When we begin to practice this spiritual instruction, we may also feel that it is difficult to become accustomed to. But if we keep trying, with the blessing of our guru, combined with our own constant practice, we will finally find ourselves capable of applying it freely in our association with different kinds of people. As was said by Shantideva, even if I cannot develop compassion towards all such people who, through the arousal of disturbing emotions, set out to try to kill me and so forth, I should at least refrain from being angry. And once Venerable Dhamma asked Lord Atisha, if people beat me, curse me, or try to kill me, what should I do? To this, Lord Atisha replied in a way that was fairly close in its meaning to Dongme Zangpo's answer to the same question. If in return for not the slightest wrong of mine, someone were to cut off even my very head, through the power of compassion to take all his negative actions upon myself is the practice of a Bodhisattva. An aspiring example of Garcho Rinpoche. There was a well-known Lama named Garcho Rinpoche in Qinghai province who was persecuted during the Cultural Revolution. Every time he was persecuted, he would make the aspiration in his heart like this: today may I practice patience for the sake of all sentient beings. Thus he exhibited excellence in motivation. During the persecution, when people were beating him, insulting him, or slandering him, he rested in a state of emptiness, free of conceptualization, and practiced the patience paramita. This was truly excellence in action, and when the persecution was over temporarily, he dedicated quietly, By the virtue of this practice of patience, may all those who have beaten me and cursed me, and all sentient beings obtain Buddhahood. This again was excellence in dedication. When the Cultural Revolution was over, there was a freer political environment for religious beliefs. Many of the people who had participated in the Lama's persecution went to see Gacho Rinpoche to confess and repent. However, he always replied leniently, "You have nothing to confess. Without you, I would not have been able to practice the paramita of patience, and that was a supreme convenience. Therefore, I do not hate you at all. Instead, I owe each of you gratitude. So please forget about the confession. This was the unique and virtuous deed of a Mahayana Bodhisattva. It is indeed quite true that those who try to harm us are like a wish-fulfilling jewel, for they are indispensable assisting factors for attaining Buddhahood. The Buddha has said that only those who have accomplished patience can become true bodhisattvas. This is the standard being set for Mahayana practitioners. No matter whether it is the way of the Bodhisattva, the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva, or in this text, 8 verses for training the mind. Therefore, when facing a bad person, we should repay their kindness with gratitude, just as we did to our precious and kind Lama. For we Mahayana practitioners, those are the inexhaustible treasures that help us perfect the merit of the patience paramita. So we really ought to cherish them constantly as a precious treasure rarely found.
Great, thank you. Like to hear your comments about this.
Well, I think that this is extremely hard to put into practice, especially right away. Since I've been practicing, I've found I've had less afflictions, and I'm able to very easily watch my speech, and even sometimes like the actions that come out of any negative emotions that come up. But I find, like, if I'm really confronted with an overwhelming affliction, like I've had a bad interaction with someone at work or something like that, it takes a while for me to contemplate it, and it's hard to confront it right away and see it for what it really is, and to appreciate that experience and come to a point where I can see the Buddha nature in the other person and be grateful for that experience. But that, again, that's a habit that needs to be formed. I'm really happy I read this section today, because I feel like it's come at an appropriate time, because I find with the past week, I've been struggling with my practice. I find that there's been a lot of mental afflictions flaring up, which has been very overwhelming. And I even if I notice the emotion coming up, and I notice that it's me, like I don't place any blame on anything external, I still find that I'm still not able, I'm delaying myself from confronting it right away. I can notice the delay, and it affects my practice right away. Because if I'm in this agitated state, and even if my speech is fine, like I'm not getting mad at anyone, I'm still harboring that resentment in myself, and I haven't resolved that. And I've noticed that when I'm in that agitated state, then I have this thought, which I know is incorrect, but it's like, well, I shouldn't practice if I'm not feeling calm, or I'm unable to practice right now because I'm too agitated and I can't do it properly. So that's definitely not a habit that I want to encourage in myself or solidify. So I noticed right away that it affects my routine. And it's nice to read this as a good reminder, and that I can't just, and I can't think that just because I practice, all the other days I practice, and it's okay to slack off for now because, my mind will return back to normal. But I need to remember that diligence and perseverance is vital, and attacking those afflictions right away is extremely important, especially for me at like this early stage of my practice, and to be brave and confront it right away and not wait for it to allow negative karma to accumulate. But yeah, I don't know if I'm at the stage where I can see everyone be grateful for every interaction, any harm that comes my way right away, but it does take a longer period of contemplation. But I agree with everything I'm reading. I think I find myself rushing myself to understand this and put it into practice and be perfect at it, but it's a slow habit that I know I have to build. And even just the things that I am better at or have come from slow practice over the years. So yeah, I'm happy I read this though. It's motivating.
Thank you so much. I always love to hear you sharing, and I think you are doing extremely well. And sometimes we cannot be too harsh on ourselves. Sometimes give ourselves a little break is fine. Don't feel guilty about that. Like we learned in words of my perfect teacher, and if you want the most beautiful music, you have to let the string not too loose, not too tight, right? So I think you're doing great. And this is indeed very hard to put into practice. I can see why this teaching was a tantric teaching before, because it is basically against people's normal reaction, right? Like if people treat me so badly, and I want to look at them as a priceless treasure, so like really against an ordinary person's reaction mode, maybe. So and it like for non-practitioner, for ordinary people, if you tell them this, they may look at you, say, "Are you crazy? Why do you do this?" But for practitioners, we know this is really priceless. So I think Khenpo explained in firstly he explained for so about the ill-natured people in our current time. So people are full of afflictions, so this is not surprise, right? Then he talked about when we are facing this situation, what we should do in for ourselves. So we cherish them as something real. So it's just that from these two angles, and then lastly, he gave an example of Garchen Rinpoche, Gacho Rinpoche. So cherish them as something real. The reasons we have talked about in this whole text already. So we don't want to avoid them, and we don't want to keep that aloofness, and then we take that as the best chance to practice patience, practice compassion, and all that. So you probably notice that a lot of these quotes are from the 37 practice of a Bodhisattva. This is a very important text also to study. Almost every verse, there are 37 verses, and almost every verse composed of a piece instruction how to deal with situations if we want to practice the Bodhisattva's way. So I do strongly recommend that text to everyone. And this way of turning the mind around the situation is exactly the way of mind training, right? It's a good thing. And in the beginning, maybe it's a little hard, but if we keep doing it, and we can train our mind to be spontaneously thinking that way. So this is the whole practice of Buddhism practice, to train our mind, to turn our mind. And if you, in the end, if you completely believe this, our mind creates all the elusive appearance of the word, then you'll be great. I want to point out here the excellence in motivation when he first got beat up, and so before that he would vow to practice patience, right, for the sake of all sentient beings. So this is in the word of my perfect teacher, we call it the 3 supreme methods. So the first one is the supreme motivation. We want to do something for benefit all sentient beings. And then in the middle, when you do it, you focus on your practice. It's called the excellence in action. Also, supreme action, supremacy of action in action. Also, and then after it's done, it's called the excellence in dedication, or the supreme method of dedication. So for Mahayana practice, these 3 sections are always important, right? Just a reminder. I think everybody knows about that.
Verse 5, take loss and defeat upon yourself, upon myself. Whenever someone out of envy does me wrong by attacking or belittling me, I will take defeat upon myself and give the victory to others. Whenever other people out of jealousy or other afflictive emotions mistreat me with the abuse or slander, or even if they mistreat my lama, my relatives, or my friends, may I take upon myself the sufferings, losses, and defeats, and offer to others the happiness, benefits, and victories. The proper attitude to others' attack. In order to acquire the last 2 lines of this verse, Geshe Chakava had been following Shairava for 6 years. He practiced these instructions throughout his life and eventually completely eradicated the clinging to the I and to the mind. Many of us received the entire transmission of the 8 verses for training the mind without any difficulty, so we should truly cherish it. This verse may seem quite easy to understand in its literal sense. However, its real intended meaning is very profound and vast. If practitioners can continue to practice it earnestly and diligently, they will definitely eliminate all clinging to the self and achieve an extremely high spiritual status of the path. It is common that other people out of impure motives, such as jealousy, attachment, anger, ignorance, or carelessness, may revile and slander us or all those related to us, such as our Vajra Lama, Vajra peers, parents, relatives, and friends in unjust ways. In fact, there are 2 types of personal attacks. One is the actual personal attack, and the other is the non-factual or unjust personal attack. For example, I have kept my vowed discipline pure and clean, but other people say that I haven't, or I did not steal anything, but someone accuses me of theft. Or I'm not a Tirthika, but someone says I am. All these are non-factual or unjust personal attacks, which means that the attack is based on something that does not accord with the facts. And a factual personal attack means that what has been said does correspond to the facts, although the nature of the verbal attack is in itself a misdeed. Usually for common people, a factual personal attack is something that can be endured to some extent but a non-factual or unjust personal attack is just too much of a torture to be endured. Ordinary people usually take those who slander them to be their biggest enemy. However, for Mahayana practitioners, slander and revilement are like the wish-fulfilling gem, a precious treasure that bestows merits and an opportunity to swiftly attain Buddhahood. Geshe Potova used to say that when people slander you, that is the greatest kindness to you. We must examine our mind to see whether it can give rise to such beliefs. On the spiritual path to Buddhahood, practitioners of the great vehicle would even give away their own wife and children, their own body, to all sentient beings. So slander and being reviled are no big deal, are they? In the past, there was a great master who was imprisoned for 6 years due to other people's jealousy, but he said, "This is my own karma." And he faced this situation with peace. Another example that we are all familiar with is Milarepa. In his last years, when the geisha offered poisoned yogurt to him out of jealousy, Milarepa, who viewed everything as dreams and illusions, calmly drank the yogurt. These are the precious qualities that a Mahayana practitioner ought to have, and a vivid illustration of how afflictive emotions can be brought onto the path. Make efforts on putting the teaching into practice. It is a pity that most practitioners today have an excessively strong sense of self-attachment and have almost reached the point where they will not yield even an inch to others. Isn't this the complete opposite from genuine Dharma practice? What's more, although some people have spent long years of practice in retreat, they still fly into a rage whenever they encounter even minor adverse conditions. If they continue with this kind of behavior, it would not have been of much benefit, even had they meditated in mountain caves throughout their whole life. Sakya Pandita, in his Treasure of Good Advice, said that even in the forest, malicious people deteriorate. Even in the city, noble people remain serene. One sees that forest animals are wild and ferocious, but the best horses are well-disciplined in town. As followers of Buddha, we must have a refined personality, and it is only when we make this the basis of our practice that we can have some achievements. There is a Tibetan saying that which addresses the fact that in peaceful times, when we can enjoy the sunshine with a full stomach and everything is going well, all seem to be good practitioners who have no mental afflictions. But as soon as difficulties arise, when food and clothing are scarce, or when there is thunder and rain, our practice is gone. This is a picture that we often see among practitioners. To overcome this kind of difficulty, we need to cultivate and maintain a pure vision in our mind, view all phenomena as dreams and illusions, and view all sentient beings as having Buddha nature. Now, overwhelmed by their heavy negative karma, they try to hurt me, but indeed, they have no choice, just as the patients fall ill, even if they do not want to. Therefore, I must treat them with great compassion. When we open our mind in this way, it will be relatively easy for us to tolerate harm from others. Once this stage has been achieved, we can further contemplate that all manifest phenomena can be turned onto the path. This understanding will increase our merit in practice and in spiritual realization. And thus we will generate a grateful mind toward all sentient beings. People often say take small losses for the sake of big gains, and that failure is the mother of success. From the viewpoint of secular people, we can learn lessons from failure and loss so that we can have better gains and successes in the future. From the perspective of Buddha Dharma, in order to attain Buddhahood, we should offer all peacefulness and happiness to others so as to achieve the ultimate enlightenment. In the Song of Victory, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche said, in order to benefit yourselves in the long term, the pith instruction is to benefit others in the short term. Therefore, we should, without the least hesitation, take upon ourselves all the faults, losses, and sufferings of others, and dedicate to others all our merits, victory, peace, and happiness. In our everyday life, if we often notice other people's faults over the passage of time, we could end up feeling that no one on this earth is truly kind-hearted. On the other hand, if we make a point to look at other people from the positive side and continually reflect on their benevolence toward us, we will gradually become accustomed to this good habit, and gratitude toward others will arise within us. Just like that, a person with the illness of jaundice sees white snow mountain as yellow, which is obviously white in the perception of a healthy person. Every phenomenon is a projection of our own mind. Having understood this true reality, we should put it into our practice. In the Domang monastery, there is a Khenpo named Lakshay. In his eyes, everyone is good. He never looks at other people's faults. Even though he recognizes that faults exist, he says it is not right to talk about other people's faults. Maybe these are the skillful methods used by Buddha and Bodhisattvas to help sentient beings and have extraordinary secret intentions. So he never argues with other people. As the saying goes, man struggles upward, water flows downwards. The upper place on the spiritual path of Dharma practice is the aforementioned conduct of great spiritual masters who take upon themselves all the suffering, loss, and defeat, and offer to others all the peace and happiness, benefit and victory. We should not be like a Bodhisattva at the beginning, and then like an ordinary person in the middle, and a demon at the end, being overwhelmed with an ever-growing ego fixation and falling into the miserable realms.
Let's stop here for a moment. It's a long reading. Okay, what's your thought?
This is so good. It's it reminded me all the previous learnings in the past year, I think. How can we have empathy toward others and forgive ourselves and forgive others, because we are all sentient beings that are born to this world because of our karma or cause effect. So we are the same in some ways, and we are just going through this journey of life. We are at different phases of life, and we all have lessons to learn, and in order to achieve Buddhahood or enlightenment or whatever you call it. But when I see someone who are doing something wrong or attacking me in some way, I try to understand where this person is from. Why is he or she doing this? And it normally comes from sometimes lack of love in their childhood, and sometimes it's their own emotional issues that they are handling, or other kind of situations. Could be financial situation, or stress from work, or they were attacked by someone else. So basically, this person is at a stage that he or she is not emotionally healthy, to say. So that's why he or she projected or attacked me. And in this way, when I look at the thing in this way, it's easy to just accept the person as is, and not get offended by whatever words or actions that person did to me or to other people. So just try to see the cause, the original cause of his action, and then normally I could get back to peace. Like, at least I will not react negatively to him, and try to find a smart way to defend myself, and at the same time try to so-called educate or try to convert the other person, and or calm that person down. And in this sense, I feel like all the Dharma practice in the past year has really benefited me a lot in training my mind, basically. So kind of be more mindful of other people's situation, and also be mindful of my own reaction, and whatever I see and whatever I receive, I try to see why I'm receiving it, why this person is treating me like this. And when I understand where he is from, I can react positively. And sometimes I could get upset for a little bit, but whenever I go back to our Dharma teaching, to our text, like today, I feel, oh yeah, it still makes sense. I just need to be reminded and keep coming back every day. If not every day, at least come back to it occasionally, or even if it's not text, I can be mindful of it during the day. Like maybe every 5 minutes of the hour, I can think about it and reflect on my emotions, and how to handle difficult situations.
Okay, thank you.
That's a lot to talk about.
Let me ask you one little question. So when you understand why other people do all these bad things to you, you can forgive them. But are you willing to give the victory to them?
I think sometimes victory is, how do you define victory? And it's temporary too. It's like, if he thinks a victory is what this person needs, no problem. I can give it to him. I'm not in a competition with him. I'm okay to be the loser of
Great.
if we are in a battle. It's not a battle. Anyway.
Great. Yeah, that's very good. Thank you. Let's finish this verse.
But before I read that, I wanna say something about the previous passage.
Yeah.
There was a sentence, there was a line in there that resonated with me. It says that there's, the Tibetan saying that in peaceful times with full sunshine and full stomachs, it seems that things are going well. But what really counts is when the hardships come out. The Tibet, the Buddhist monasteries and temples that I've seen personally, that I've gone to, they've all existed in mountainous, difficult, not places that you typically go on vacation. I used to wonder, like, why don't we just build build large temples in places like Hawaii? And it's very, very, lovely lifestyle. But now that I think about it, I think that the sort of lifestyle that where these temples are, maybe in mountainous or cold environments, I think it actually it accelerates their pursuit of enlightenment for the practitioners who are there. And then the other side of this is that I also recognize that I'm perceiving this as through a lens of my own, because I may have biases that, hey, maybe Hawaii's paradise and so and so is a tough environment. I'm realizing now that these are just projections of my own mind, that maybe the spiritual masters who actually live there, they don't think that way as I do. So this just shows me how much more I have to cultivate in my own practice.
Yeah, I want to echo that, Joe. I went on a silent retreat about a year and a half ago. It's a 7-day silent retreat, and we do like meditation and a walk all the time, and we eat very healthy at that time for 7 days. And they collected all our cell phones. So we are very isolated from the world, and it felt great. And at the beginning, it's very hard to not think about our family and the daily things, all the work we have to do, and the other financial situation and stuff. But at the end of the retreat, everyone was so happy and peaceful. And when the retreat ended, when they handed back our cell phone, the first thing my friend did was sighed before she opened her email, because it's like hard to get back to real life. It's like when you are on the retreat, it's everything, it's peaceful and seems you worked out everything. But once you face reality and there still the old issues, you need to adjust, and it is hard to get integrated back into the real life.
we can talk a lot about environment, Tibet, and the people over there, and why Buddhists flourish over there. But that's a long topic. But I may show, it depends on the time. I may show some Dharma monastery, and when we visit there, and
Oh,
was
yeah,
so
that would be
beautiful.
great. But,
Yeah, let's
hmm.
finish the text first.
The importance of integrating Dharma teaching into our minds. If our spiritual practices are not compatible with how we behave as human beings, even though we may look like excellent practitioners who have been in retreat in the mountains for ages, we may still find ourselves inept at getting along with others when we leave our seclusion. We may even find our own practices useless at critical times, such as when we encounter difficulties and we cannot overcome them. If this is the case, on the one hand, it could destroy other people's faith or confidence towards the Buddha Dharma. And on the other hand, we ourselves might be frustrated by repeated setbacks in our spiritual practice and lose our enthusiasm on the path. Actually, in adverse circumstances, it is even more important to bear in mind these pith instructions given in this text. And whenever mental afflictions arise, immediately subdue using the pith instructions, like a warrior on the battlefield, who swiftly draws out his weapon on meeting an enemy and destroys him without delay. But if we know only a little of the instructions and only carry out a few practices in a superficial way, or even if we have paid no attention to the instructions and merely recite heart mantras, speculate on bindus every day, and then think of ourselves as Buddhists, then such behaviors will not bring genuine benefits to our own continuum. The Kadampa masters in the past put extraordinarily high value on the last two lines of this verse. If we copy them down on a piece of paper and stick it on some noticeable place in our home to remind ourselves from time to time, for sure, that will be of great help to our practice. From the biographies of Kadampa masters, we can see how virtuous their minds were and how pure their behaviors were. If we read more of their biographies, our faith in Dharma practice would increase, and we would be filled with diligence and enthusiastic perseverance, so that we would carry ourselves wholeheartedly onto the path of mind training.
All right, this is relatively easy, and you want to comment on this?
It reiterates everything that we've talked about in this class, in this session, especially the importance of cutting down those weeds before they, or as they sprout, before they take root.
Mm.
And it's certainly much more difficult. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
I can tell you my own personal experience. I'll share one quick story before we end. About a month ago, I was at a coffee shop, and I ordered my beverage, and it took him about maybe 30 plus minutes to make the beverage, and I found myself steaming. Like I was thirsty, I was waiting for my beverage, and I noticed myself getting more and more frustrated. But I'm at the point where I can observe these emotions and these mental afflictions come up. I'm not at the point where I can stop them when they take root. At some point I did explode figuratively. I did have a few words with the barista, the person making the drink. And as I was doing it, I recognized my faults, and I was partially regretting it as I was venting about the delay. So I'm at the point where I can kind of watch myself in slow motion. I'm not able to stop the train. The train still goes, and it still goes forward, and it still happens, but at least I can recognize it. So that's an area that I'm working on.
Very good. That's just keep doing that, and then one day you will be just like, okay,
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Well, I experienced a similar situation, but I find that if I make it an issue and think, okay, I'm not going to explode, then I will. But if I avert my attention to something else and no longer allow it to be an issue, then there's less tendency for me to act adversely. It's a difficult thing. It takes a lot of practice. Thanks for that.
Okay, like I promised, I would like to show some of the picture of Domon Monastery, which was the Khenpo Sodargye's original monastery, right? He took ordination there originally, and his master was called Khenpo Sodargye. And this is when you take walk within the yard, I think, the big yard, you can see this very nice monastery. This is taken from the side, and this is getting, I think it's closer. This is the big stone with the name Domon over here, and some description about when it was established, 1877. That's the master who initially started the monastery. This is just some other pictures. And these are the stones with carved mantras. They call them money stone. You can see a lot of these in the Tibetan area, right? So the beautiful buildings over there. This is some other pictures. And what I want to show is this one. This is the sutra hall inside. So there's a very special sutra hall, and people do teachings inside there. This is just offerings to the masters and the Buddhas. And then they have that second floor, which hosts a lot of Buddha statues and masters statues, and Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's hat and boots and text that he used, and including a very precious Buddha Shakyamuni's statue, which was about the same age as the statue from Sangye Monastery. No, not Sangye. That Geo statue in Lhasa. Was like it was like the high point of the tour, and there was a monk actually who was dedicated to, if there are tourists going there, they have a phone number, you can call them, and they will be there waiting and explain to you about all the different halls, and there are halls of Shirigarbha, Manjushri, and of course masters and Mipa Rinpoche, including many Tibetan masters in the old times. Their statues over there, very precious. Oh, this is the place. It's about how long was the drive? About a half an hour drive, I think, from Dharma Monastery. This is the stupa people built for Khenpo Sodargye, and in the place where he was born. This is the precise place when he was born in 1962, June 4th. So his parents house must be here before. And then on the day we went there was this the villagers were having like a parties, and they in front of, on this side, the stupa actually facing a little river, and on the river bank, and the people put up a lot of tents for the event. They have a dance and some cultural display, and even there was a horse, and we had fun like riding the horse. The villagers were very, very friendly. So the horse riding was actually free. It was very impressive. But this is the place where Khenpo was, the precise place where he was born.
Thank you for the beautiful pictures. So I saw pictures, but this is from someone that I know, he took it.
Yeah.
It was different. Yeah. Anyways, just let everyone know when that stupa was erected, or at some time, it's actually there's a natural rainbow just around the stupa, very close. Yeah, I've seen that picture also.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's great. So one day I will be there also. Just as all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dedicate merit, so likewise I also dedicate all merits to the cause of enlightenment and all sentient beings. By this accumulation of merit, may I obtain all-seeing omniscience. May all faults be defeated. The rolling, turbulent waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death. From this ocean of samsara, may I liberate beings, just as Bodhisattva Manjushri attained omniscience and Samatambhadra too. All these merits now I dedicate to attain, to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of the past, present, and future praise dedication at supreme, so now I dedicate all these roots of virtue for all beings to perfect good actions. Om Ahum Vajaguru Pama Sedehum. Om Ahum Vajaguru Pama Sedehum. Om Ahum Vajaguru Pama Sedehum. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And we're going to continue this study next week.
Yep.
See you
next
next
week.
week.